Well, what if I told you that this now, this moment when you breathe while listening to my voice, is the only time you really have? That the past is a memory edited by pain or nostalgia, the future is just speculation disguised as planning, and the present, well, the present is all there is. And yet, you treat it as if it were invisible, as if it were an empty space to be crossed as quickly as possible towards an after that never really arrives. But then, tell me with brutal honesty, why do you insist on running away from the only place where life really happens? Because that's exactly what you do. You run away. Not consciously, not with the clarity of someone who chooses to escape, but with the subtlety of someone who has been trained since childhood to believe that the present is insignificant. That value is always ahead. That you will only be enough when you achieve something, when you reach some imaginary point on the timeline where you can finally breathe a sigh of relief and say, now I can live. Except that moment never comes, because you are addicted to postponing your own existence. And meanwhile life, that pulsating, urgent, unrepeatable thing, slips through your fingers like sand you don't even realize you're holding. Alan Watts, with that cutting lucidity that only great philosophers have, already warned. The future is a concept. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be, because time is always now. And yet you continue to bet all your emotional chips on a temporal mirage that moves as you try to reach it. The big problem with your anguish, my dear, is not something concrete that happened yesterday, nor a real threat looming tomorrow. It lies in your chronic inability to remain where you really are. And that has a name: existential escape. You have turned time into a psychological refuge, a safe place where you can hide the discomfort of being who you are, here and now, without masks and without excuses. You have learned to fear the present as if it were too unstable ground to tread on. So you have taken refuge in the comforting narratives of what has already passed and the seductive promises of what has not yet arrived. And in this process of continuous evasion, you have lost the only point where existence truly touches you. This moment that is already passing as you listen to me. It's curious, and tragic if I may be frank, how you live as if you were a spectator of your own existence. You walk around like someone watching a bad movie, hoping that the next scene will save the plot. But it won't. There is no miraculous twist. No redemptive third act where everything falls into place and makes sense. There is only this exact moment in which you are here, breathing, perhaps even uncomfortable with what is being said. And that, as simple as it may seem, is already everything. The present is such a scandalous gift that you ignore it for fear of feeling. Because the present, contrary to what the cheap mindfulness industry sells, is not just peace and deep breathing. The now is intense. It is naked. It is a merciless mirror where you see yourself without masks, without filters, without the convenient editing you apply to memories and expectations. And who wants to face their own face without the makeup of the ego? Who has the courage to look at themselves and realize that beneath all the justifications and comforting narratives, there is someone scared, vulnerable, incomplete? You have been conditioned, and that word is no exaggeration, to treat the present as a means, never as an end, as if life were an infinite springboard to something greater, always greater. Childhood is for passing college entrance exams. Youth is for getting a good job. Adulthood is for buying a house, getting married, having children, and then perhaps enjoying retirement. But when? When exactly do you truly live? When do you stop, take a deep breath and say, this right now is enough? Never. Because you have learned that value is always ahead, that the present is trivial, utilitarian, something to be quickly overcome on the way to the next stage. Your Western mind, trained to think in stages and goals, has sabotaged you. It made you believe that life is a springboard to something bigger, always bigger. Watts compared this logic to the absurdity of listening to a symphony, eagerly waiting only for the last note. Imagine listening to Mozart in its entirety just for the ending, ignoring the beauty of the intermediate harmonies, the tension of the chords, the dance between melody and silence. That's what you do with your life. You're waiting for the climax of a melody that only makes sense when danced note by note. But you're deaf. Your haste has deafened you to the music that is already playing. And that's why you live tired, anxious, fragmented. Your body is here, but your mind is wandering through possibilities. And that comes at a very high price. You are becoming spiritually ill because you don't know how to inhabit the moment. You live full of empty mantras like, it will pass, it will get better, it will work out, when the real mantra should be, it's now. It's now that you can breathe consciously. It's now that you can smile or cry, feel or be silent. Not later, not someday, now. But you don't know how to do that, because you were never taught, because you learned to fear the now as if it were unstable, dangerous, too unpredictable to surrender to. So you clung to the past as if it were a fixed identity, and to the future as if it were guaranteed salvation. And in this process of continuous evasion, you turned the present, this miracle that renews itself with every blink of an eye, into an empty corridor, a non-place that you rush through without realizing that this is exactly where everything happens. The present bothers you because it is raw, because it shows you without filters, without editing, without the comforting narrative of "it will get better." It puts you face to face with who you really are right now, not who you promise to be someday. And that, my friend, is scary for someone who has spent their entire life building a future image of themselves. The now is a merciless mirror. It accepts no excuses, validates no projections. It simply is. And you, accustomed to negotiating with time as if it were an emotional creditor, don't know how to deal with something that can't be bargained with. Alan Watts had an expression that pierces the modern ego like a sharp spear. You are making a plan to be free in the future, when the only time there is to be free is the present. And that sentence should paralyze you for a few seconds. It should make you question how many times you've said to yourself, "When I achieve this, then I'll rest. When I solve that, then I'll be happy. When everything falls into place, then I'll live." But this postponed freedom is a sophisticated prison. It is the psychological prison where you lock up your own soul while waiting for a key that is already in your hand. Think about your days. How many times have you done something, taken a shower, eaten, driven to work without really being present? How many conversations have you had where your body was there, but your mind was miles away, planning what to say next or dwelling on something that already happened? You live in constant dissociation, as if your consciousness and your body were two separate entities, each following its own script, and this fragmentation takes a toll. You feel exhausted even when you haven't done anything physically demanding. You feel empty even when surrounded by people. You feel lost even when following all the maps you've been given. Do you want to change? Do you really want to find some kind of peace in this internal chaos? Then you need to understand a painful truth. The problem is not the world outside. It's not your annoying boss. It's not the bill you have to pay. It's not the goal you haven't achieved. The problem is that you're not here. You're mentally absent from your own life, like a ghost wandering through commitments without ever really landing in any of them. And while you insist on this subtle but constant escape, the only time you really have, the present, continues to be wasted as if it were infinite. But it isn't. And one day you'll realize that. The question is, will it be too late? Will it be when you're old, looking back and realizing that you spent your whole life waiting to live but never actually lived? Because that is the fate of those who treat the present as a corridor. They go through their entire existence without ever stopping to feel the ground beneath their feet. You were trained to postpone yourself, to be a walking promise of yourself. From your first steps, you were pushed to believe that the value of life is always on the next step and never on the one you are stepping on now. The world indoctrinated you to be an unfinished project, someone whose existence will only be validated when you achieve something more. A degree, a car, marriage, the applause of the right people. And that is the silent tragedy of your generation. You have stopped living to become a permanent draft of a future version that never materializes. Alan Watts saw this existential addiction with surgical clarity. We are mistaken in thinking that life should be taken as a journey towards some goal, when in fact it is more like a song. The purpose is the melody itself. But you don't listen. You want to move forward. You want to arrive. And in this blind eagerness to arrive, you forget to be. You forget that life is not a race with a finish line, but a dance. And dance has no destination, only rhythm. Notice the everyday absurdity. You walk into a room and your mind already wants to leave. A new cycle begins and you're already thinking about the end. You start a relationship wanting it to change, progress, mature, but you never allow yourself to be in it as it is in this imperfect moment, in this raw stage. You are always one step ahead of yourself, like someone running after their own shadow and never catching up. You live in the future as a hostage, and this prison has no visible bars, but it has goals, dreams, plans, ambitions. All of this seems noble, doesn't it? I am a visionary person, you repeat with inflated pride. But do you know what Watts would think of that? He would say that this vision, which makes you so proud, is actually a sophisticated blindness, the systematic refusal to confront what is happening at this very moment. Because the present, for those who lack courage, seems insignificant. It seems insufficient. It seems too small to contain all the greatness you imagine for yourself. So you discard it. You treat it as a mandatory step, like an emotional toll you must pay to get to the place where you will finally be someone. You want emotional stability, mental clarity, inner peace. And you don't realize that all of this is in the same place you are running from, the moment. You believe that peace is something that is achieved through effort, accumulation, conquest, when ironically, it only reveals itself when you abandon the effort, when you cease the internal struggle. The moment you stop trying to force life to fit your mental scripts and simply allow, simply be, simply breathe without the urgency to turn that breath into productivity. Watts had an expression that often bothered existential workaholics. There is nothing to be done. There is nothing to achieve. Everything is already here. And that hurts your working class ego, your chronic productivity mindset, your deep belief that value lies in sweat and not in surrender. You want to achieve peace with the same mindset with which you try to buy a car. Effort, payment, reward. But peace, my dear, cannot be achieved. It is allowed. It appears when you stop fighting what is and accept the dance as it presents itself, without demanding that the music change tone. Meanwhile, life slips through your fingers like wet sand. It is tension that makes you lose, not lack of control. It is the fear of stagnation that immobilizes you, not the absence of movement. And it is the illusion of linear progress that prevents you from realizing that you are not in a game with a defined ending. You are in a constant improvisation. And improvisation, unlike obsessive planning, requires total presence. It requires you to listen to the beat, feel the rhythm, celebrate each step as if it were the last and the first at the same time. But you don't dance. You stumble, hurried, with the music in your ears and your head on the schedule. You are so obsessed with reaching the end of the song that you forgot that the full dancer doesn't ask, "Where are we going?" He simply surrenders to the rhythm, trusts the beat, allows the body to respond to the melody without the mind having to control every movement. But that requires trust. And trust, for those who have been taught to distrust everything they cannot predict, seems irresponsible. And deep down, do you know what hurts the most? It's knowing that the music is playing right now as you read this, as you breathe, but you're not listening. You're thinking about what comes next. The next video, the next task, the next problem to solve. You are once again running away from the only place where you could find what you are looking for. Here, in this mundane, everyday, even vulgar moment. Because it is in these seemingly insignificant moments that life really happens. It is in the inattentive breath, in the uncomfortable silence, in the distracted gaze out the window that the essence of being alive resides. The problem is not ambition, it is abandonment. You have abandoned the now as one abandons an old acquaintance, thinking they have nothing more to offer. But the present is a silent master. It is in what is happening in this second while you breathe that all the answers lie. This is where lucidity, intuition, true love, healing regret, and spontaneous gratitude reside. None of this exists outside of the present. The rest are ideas, representations, projections of a mind that cannot bear the brutal simplicity of what is. But you want control. You want planning. You want assurance that everything will work out if you follow the script. And life, in its rebellious and indomitable nature, gives you none of that. It gives you the moment, raw, unpredictable, non-negotiable. And that moment asks you every second, will you continue to run away, or will you finally have the courage to stay? Because if you are distressed, it may not be because of an excess of problems, but because of an absence of presence. You are tired of trying to control the uncontrollable, of aiming at a target that changes place with every step. Watts said that suffering comes from the illusion that we are separate from the whole. And this separation arises when you disconnect from the present, when you treat life as a long-term investment and not as a dive, when you collect goals instead of inhabiting moments, when you rush to the end instead of living the middle. Do you want to save your existence? Then stop running. Stop looking for answers in time that has already passed or in what has not yet been born. Stay here. Feel what is happening in this moment. The discomfort, the boredom, the restlessness, the urge to pick up your phone or skip this video. Observe all of this. This discomfort is your true self trying to emerge from under layers of distractions and excuses. And when you finally dare to stop, even for a brief second, the silence screams. It is in this disconcerting pause, in this interval between one urgency and another, that you realize something startling. You don't know how to be with yourself. The present feels strange to you, and you in turn reject it as if it were an old enemy. The now bothers you because it reveals what the rush disguises. The suffocating loneliness, the unconfessed fears, the guilt buried under layers of productivity and distraction. You've gotten used to running away, to entertaining yourself, to numbing yourself with tasks, notifications, and social demands, because anything seems better than facing the brutal nakedness of who you really are when no one is looking. Bertrand Russell, with that sharp irony that only British philosophers have, said something devastating. Most people would rather die than think, and in fact, many do. And you be honest, how many times have you died in life just to avoid thinking? How many times have you chosen cowardly distraction over honest confrontation with yourself? Nietzsche, in a fit of brutal lucidity, stated that people don't want the truth. What they want is security. And perhaps that is exactly what you are looking for in the past and the future. A kind of emotional security, solid ground where you can rest from the instability of the present moment. The past offers you identity, even if it is an identity built on edited versions of who you were. I am this way because of what happened, you repeat, as if carrying scars were the same as having personality. And the future offers you hope, even if it is empty hope, a promise you make to yourself every Sunday night and break every Monday morning. But this security is a mirage. The past is memory, and therefore always an edited fiction. You don't remember what happened, you remember the last time you remembered what happened. Each memory is a copy of a copy, distorted by the emotions of the present, manipulated by your ego to serve the narrative you want to tell about yourself. And the future. The future is pure speculation, a house of cards built on fragile assumptions, unfulfilled desires, and projected fears. The present, as uncomfortable as it may seem, is the only place where you can touch reality, even if it hurts. And it hurts, I know. It hurts because it is immediate, because it does not accept negotiation, because it shows you things as they are, not as you would like them to be. The present does not have the kindness to offer you comforting narratives or guaranteed happy endings. It offers you only what is, and that for those who have spent their entire lives avoiding the truth can be unbearable. But it also heals, because only what is felt in the present moment has the power to transform. You cannot change the past no matter how many times you mentally review it. You cannot control the future no matter how obsessively you plan every detail. But you can feel what is happening now. You can observe the anger rising, the sadness weighing you down, the anxiety tightening your chest. And as you observe, as you allow these emotions to exist without trying to stifle or rationalize them immediately, something begins to shift. Something begins to dissolve. We live in a time when stopping is almost a crime. Rest has become synonymous with laziness. Contemplation is treated as idleness, and being present seems outdated, as if the world spins at a speed that leaves no room for reflection. But the truth is that you were not made to run like a loose cog in the capitalist machinery of existence. You are sensitive flesh, pulsating emotion, a jumble of stories, wounds, and affections in search of meaning. And meaning, contrary to what is preached, is not found in the accumulation of experiences, nor in the achievements that are trumpeted on social media. It reveals itself when you have the courage to descend into your inner self and face what vibrates behind appearances. But this requires something that few have: courageous presence. And that, my friend, is what is missing when all you do is run away from yourself, when you treat introspection as a waste of time and vulnerability as weakness. Alan Watts was amazed at how Western culture treats time as an instrument of oppression. For him, the clock was not invented to liberate, but to enslave. Time is a device invented to measure movement, but modern man has become a slave to time, as if it were something real, absolute, and tyrannical. You feel this every day, in the alarm clock that pulls you out of bed like a ruthless jailer, in business hours that suffocate you in a mechanical routine, in the weekend that slips through your fingers like water while you try to make up for in 2 days the life you didn't live in 5. And when you realize it, it's Monday again, and the cycle begins again like a nightmare you call routine. You may think that this is the price of maturity, that growing up really means swallowing hard and moving on with no time to feel, to stop, to truly live. But no, that's not maturity. It's existential amnesia. You've forgotten that you're just passing through. You've forgotten that every second is unrepeatable, that there is no replay for the present, that every breath is unique and every glance has an invisible farewell embedded in it. You live as if you had all the time in the world, but you don't. You live as if you could love later, rest later, feel later. But life is not kind to those who procrastinate. It passes by with light steps, and when you notice, you are too old to go back, and too young to die without regret. And the worst part is that you know it. In some hidden corner of your consciousness, you know you are running away. You know you are exchanging the real for the imaginary, the concrete for the abstract, the living for the planned. But admitting this would be admitting that you are afraid of the present. Afraid of seeing yourself without filters. Afraid of discovering that, beneath all the social masks and accumulated achievements, there is someone you barely know. Do you know what is most tragic about all this? It is that you do not even realize the extent of the wealth you are wasting. The present, that miracle that renews itself with every blink of an eye, is where the most sublime moments reside. A sincere touch, a spontaneous laugh, a tear that falls without permission. All of this happens when you surrender to the now. But you are absent. Your mind is on what you should be doing, or what you have already done and shouldn't have. You are trying to control the uncontrollable, and in the process you are losing what is priceless. You live as if there were a cosmic primer guiding you, as if the universe had given you an invisible to-do list with hidden deadlines that you must meet in order to finally feel sufficient. And with each item left unchecked, the weight on your soul grows like a silent monster. But what if I told you that this list never existed? That no one, except your own conditioned mind, promised you that happiness lived at some specific point on the timeline? You cling to goals like a castaway clings to debris, believing that by completing all your duties you will be rescued by a better, lighter, more complete life. But it doesn't come, because the life you eagerly await is already happening. Only you have your back turned to it. You are looking at the imaginary horizon while stepping on real flowers. You are waiting for the perfect sunset while ignoring the light that already illuminates your face. What you call the future is often just an elegant hiding place, a psychological alibi for not facing the cracks of the present. You mentally repeat mantras like, "One day I'll get there." When everything falls into place, then yes, just one more effort. But all of this is self-deception. It's emotional makeup for a despair you don't dare to name. Watts was categorical when he said, "You cannot live in any other moment than the present." The attempt to live in the future is a persistent illusion, and living in the past is a prison without walls. And yet, you insist on living elsewhere, like someone who buys a ticket to a destination that only exists in cheap motivational pamphlets. Meanwhile, your real life, the one made up of breathing, touch, sound, and smell, is neglected like a book you leave open but don't read. There is no magic in tomorrow. There is no peace in the after. What exists is an eternal invitation. The now calls you every second with a soft and constant voice. But you don't listen because you are too distracted by internal noises. Psychological time, as Krishnamurti would say, is the main generator of anguish. The mind divided between what is and what should be is in constant conflict, and you live at war with yourself. You live stretched between the pressures of what you should have done and the demands of what you still need to achieve. You are always falling short, always incomplete, and you feel frustrated not because you are stuck but because you are distant from yourself. And no one can live like this for long without becoming sick inside. Notice your days. Each morning begins with the urgency to get everything done and ends with the feeling that something was missing. Have you ever noticed that even when everything goes right, you still feel like it's not enough? That's because you've become addicted to anticipating what comes next. Addicted to projecting future satisfaction as a reward for a present you live with resentment. But living in anticipation of relief is like chasing the sunset. The more you try to reach it, the further away it gets. The present is not an obstacle to be overcome, it is the only thing you really have. Everything else is speculation. And the cruelest part, while you run to achieve happiness, it is sitting on the park bench you ran past. It is in the conversation you ignored, in the smell of coffee you didn't smell, in the laughter you didn't laugh because you were too focused on being productive. Your haste is blinding you. It is turning existence into a map without territory. It is replacing the flavor of life with goals, alarms, deliveries, and notifications. Watts said that the meaning of life is simply to be alive. It's so obvious, so simple, and yet everyone runs around in a panic as if they need to achieve something beyond themselves. You are in a panic. You just don't realize it because your panic is dressed up as routine, disguised as responsibility, camouflaged in the relentless pursuit of success and recognition. And that's why, even surrounded by achievements, you feel alone. Even surrounded by people, you feel that no one sees you, because you abandoned yourself along the way. You stopped listening to your silences, ignored the subtle signals from your body, silenced the pleas of your heart in the name of an abstract idea of progress. But progress to where if everything that really matters is already here? Where else do you intend to go if your consciousness has never left the present? And if this is affecting you now, if something in these words is touching a wound you didn't know you had, then maybe it's time to stop just listening and start really diving in. Because this video will end, you'll move on to the next one, and in a few days you'll forget you ever felt this way. But if you really want this conversation to go deeper, if you want to explore these ideas more calmly, more deeply, then subscribe to the channel and consider joining our members club. There we explore these issues without rushing, without algorithms pushing us, without the anxiety of the next video. It's a space for those who want to stop running and start really thinking. Life is trying to wake you up, shake your shoulders and say, pay attention. And if you don't listen now, you may hear it when it's too late. When all that remains is regret and the bitter taste of having existed without having lived. You have been deceived by one of the most seductive fallacies of modernity, the belief that life is justified at the point of arrival. Since childhood, you have been instilled with the notion that existence is a ladder, and that each step you climb is a symbolic medal on the way to a glorious summit where supposedly everything will make sense. But that summit never materializes, because it doesn't exist. It was fabricated by a culture obsessed with goals, validation, and rewards that are always one step ahead. You have learned to live for the future, like a domesticated animal that only moves at the sound of the promise of emotional reinforcement. And so you are trained to wait. Wait for recognition, wait for success, wait for retirement, wait for ideal love. But time does not wait for you. It passes like a train that never returns. And what you lose today will never be returned with interest tomorrow. The irony of it all is that deep down you feel it. In moments of rare honesty, when the noise of the world falls silent and the masks slip away, something inside you whispers, "This is not life." Maybe you hear that voice when you're alone in the car, watching the traffic lights change color while your mind wanders through voids disguised as commitments. Or when you're surrounded by people and yet feel isolated, disconnected from a truth you can't name. Alan Watts captured this anguish with surgical precision. We are always going somewhere. We are never there. Our education, our society, our culture have taught us that the present moment is trivial. And this indoctrination is so deep that even when you try to relax, have fun, allow yourself, guilt appears. Guilt for not producing, for not moving forward, for not making the most of your time, the way they said was right. The present has become a luxury for the few. And ironically, it is the only asset you truly possess. Observe your daily gestures. Brushing your teeth, showering, walking down the street, making coffee. How many of these actions do you perform with full presence? Almost none. Because your mind has been programmed to always be ahead of your body, like a neurotic manager who anticipates all possible employee failures. You live in a constant state of existential schizophrenia. Your body is here, but your consciousness has already projected itself to the email you need to answer, to the bill that expired yesterday, to the conversation that hasn't happened yet. This dissociation is the silent epidemic of our time, and it comes at a very high cost. You disconnect from your own existence. You live on autopilot with a dormant soul. And no, this is not a romantic philosophy of living in the now as if the world were an eternal field of flowers. This is not cheap self-help, it is philosophical brutality. It is the harsh and non-negotiable call to reality. The present is uncomfortable because it requires courage. Staying in the now means being vulnerable, letting go of the narrative of control, accepting uncertainty as part of the dance. And that's scary. It's easier to make plans, set goals, plan 1,000 versions of an unlikely future than to sit in silence and ask, who am I without all that? Most people run away from that question like the devil runs from the cross, because the answer doesn't come with status or guarantees. It comes with risk, with exposure, with the discomfort of being naked before your own conscience. But it is precisely in this raw and unprotected space that true freedom resides. When you manage, even for a few minutes, not to run away, not to justify yourself, something is revealed. An intense, vibrant presence, almost absurd in its vividness. You experience the now as it is, unpredictable, full, dizzying. And in that moment, however brief, you understand what Watts meant when he said that life is not a journey with a destination. Life is the music being danced right now. You don't dance waiting for the music to end. You dance because the melody plays. And the great human tragedy is that many only realize this when the music ends. Do you want meaning? Well, maybe that's exactly what it means. To realize that there is no meaning that can be explained, only lived. And living is something that can only be done in the now. The rest is fantasy, project, daydream, illusion polished by centuries of fear and control. So stop, breathe. Feel this moment with everything it carries. The sound, the smell, the taste, the texture. Feel your own breath as a manifestation that you are here. And ask yourself with almost brutal sincerity, what are you still waiting for to really start existing? Because the clock won't stop. The sand in the hourglass is falling. And when the last grain falls, will you have lived or just passed through life like someone waiting for something that never came? And here is the last and most painful truth you need to face. You are not putting off life because of lack of time, lack of opportunity, or excess of responsibilities. You are putting off life because you are afraid of it. Afraid to truly feel. Afraid of disappointment. Afraid of discovering that even when living fully in the present, life remains imperfect, incomplete, full of cracks. Because while you procrastinate, you can keep the fantasy intact. You can believe that one day everything will be different. That one day you will finally be happy. But that day does not exist. And deep down you always knew that. What you call planning is most of the time existential procrastination. What you call responsibility is often cowardice in disguise. You hide behind real obligations so you don't have to face the most frightening obligation of all. That of being alive, here, now, without excuses and without guarantees. You have built a sophisticated prison. It has no iron bars, but it has endless commitments. It has no jailer, but it has an inner voice that never stops demanding. It has no defined sentence, but you live as if you were serving a life sentence for crimes you never committed. And the most absurd thing, You yourself are the architect of this prison. You yourself locked the door, and the key has always been in your pocket. Watts warned us about this psychological trap with brutal clarity. Life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. But you have turned your existence into an impossible puzzle. You keep trying to fit the pieces together, organize the chaos, control the variables. And meanwhile, life passes you by. The music plays, but you're too busy reading the score, analyzing the beats, trying to understand the theory behind the melody. You forgot to dance. Notice the cruel irony. You say you want to live, but you spend most of your time planning how to live. You say you want to be happy, but you postpone happiness until conditions are ideal. You say you want peace, but you maintain a constant internal war between who you are and who you think you should be. And in this war, both sides lose. Because you are both sides. You are the soldier and the enemy, the executioner and the victim, the judge and the defendant. And do you know what is most devastating? It is realizing that you don't have to be in this war. No one forced you to enlist. You volunteered. You believed that fighting was living, that suffering was growing, that postponing was maturing. But it's not. Fighting is just fighting. Suffering is just suffering. Postponing is just wasting. And you're tired. So deeply tired that you don't even notice it anymore. Because tiredness has become routine. Anguish has become personality. Absence has become presence. You may be waiting for me to tell you what to do, to give you a formula, a method, a clear path. But there isn't one. Because the liberation you seek is not in doing something different. It is in stopping doing, in ceasing the struggle, in letting go of the weapons you carry against yourself. The peace you seek is not at the end of the journey. It is in the decision to stop running. And that is the most liberating and frightening revelation at the same time. You are already where you need to be. There is no place to go. There is no better version of yourself waiting in the future. There is no perfect moment where everything will finally make sense. There is only this imperfect moment, this irregular breath, this heart that beats without asking permission. And if you can, even for a second, accept this without resistance, something changes. It doesn't change the world, it changes you. And when you change, the whole world changes with you. Think about how many times you found yourself saying, "When I achieve this, then I'll relax." Or "After I solve that, then I'll be able to be happy." But that moment never comes. Because as soon as you achieve something, your mind already projects the next thing. It already creates a new condition. It establishes a new obstacle between you and the permission to simply exist. And you spend your whole life chasing a finish line that moves at the same speed you run. It's exhausting, it's cruel, and it's completely unnecessary. Because the permission you seek doesn't have to come from outside. It doesn't have to come from an achievement. It doesn't have to come from validation. It already exists within you. It always has. But you have learned to ignore it. You have learned to distrust it. You have learned that existing without producing, without progressing, without improving, is laziness. But it is not. It is courage. It is rebellion. It is the refusal to turn your life into a commodity. The question you need to answer now, and no one can answer it for you, is: how much longer are you going to pretend you are living when you are only surviving? How much longer will you wait for someone's permission, for validation of something, for the guarantee that everything will work out? Because that guarantee doesn't exist. It never has, and it never will. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual, nor with insurance against frustration. It comes raw, urgent, ephemeral, and it asks only one thing of you: presence. Not perfection, not achievement, just presence. Do you want to change your life? Then start by feeling it. Not planning, not organizing, not optimizing. Feeling the discomfort of the chair you're sitting in, the weight of the air entering your lungs, the tension in your body that you've been carrying for so long that you don't even notice it anymore. Start there, because that's where life happens. Not in goals, not in dreams, not in plans, but here, in this second that is already passing while you decide whether to finally wake up or continue sleeping standing up. So stop, now. Not after you finish this video, not when you finish what you were doing. Now, take a deep breath. Feel the air coming in, feel it going out. This breath that you don't even notice most of the time is the most visceral proof that you are alive. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, now. And if you can feel that, really feel it, not just think about it, you've already started coming home. Because the home you're looking for isn't a place, it's a state. It's the state of presence. But understand, presence is not permanent peace. It's not the absence of problems. It's not a Zen state where everything flows magically. Presence is the courage to be here even when it hurts. It is feeling the anguish without trying to escape it. It is looking at boredom without needing to fill it immediately. It is allowing life to be exactly as it is in this moment, without demanding that it be different. And that, my friend, is revolutionary. Because you have been conditioned your whole life to resist, to fight, to change what is. But true change comes from acceptance, not resistance. What's left us with a powerful image? You cannot reach the dawn by going east. The dawn comes to you when you stand still. And you are tired of chasing the dawn. Tired of chasing the version of yourself that is always one step ahead. Tired of living as if real life begins later. So be still, not as resignation, but as surrender. Surrender to the reality of the present moment. And when you do that, something curious happens. Things that seemed urgent lose their urgency. Things that seemed essential turn out to be superfluous. And you realize that you were carrying a weight you never needed to carry. You were solving problems that were never really yours. You were living a life that was designed by others and that you simply accepted as truth. But the truth is yours, and it can only be discovered here. In the silence between one thought and another. In the pause between one breath and the next. In the fleeting moment where you are neither past nor future but pure existence. And in that moment, you don't need to be anything else. You don't need to achieve anything else. You don't need to prove anything else. You already are, and that is enough. It always has been. I won't promise you that this will solve all your problems. I won't say that you'll wake up tomorrow enlightened, calm, fulfilled. But I will tell you this, you'll feel less alone, because you'll finally be with yourself. You'll stop running away from the only company that really matters, your own. And when you stop running away from yourself, something opens up, a possibility, a space, a gap through which life can finally enter. The first step is not heroic, it's not grand, it's simple. Notice when you're running away, when you automatically reach for your phone, when you plan obsessively, when you get lost in worries about tomorrow or ruminations about yesterday. Just notice. Don't judge yourself. Don't try to fix it. Just note, oh, I'm running away again. And come back. Come back to your body. Come back to your breath. Come back to the now. As many times as necessary. Because that's what life is, an eternal return. There is no arrival. There is only the constant movement of returning to the only place where you really are. And it may seem impossible at first. You try to be present, and in 2 seconds you're lost in your thoughts again. You try to feel your breath, and soon you're planning dinner. That's normal. You've spent decades training your mind to escape. You won't unlearn that overnight. But every time you realize you've escaped and come back, you're getting stronger. You're creating a new neural pathway. You're teaching your brain that it's possible to exist without always being somewhere else. And little by little something changes. Not dramatically, not with fireworks, but subtly. You begin to notice flavors you never noticed before, textures you never felt. You start to really listen when someone speaks, instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. You start to see brighter colors. You start to feel that you are inhabiting your own body instead of just carrying it around like an inconvenient burden. And that's not enlightenment. It's simply being alive. It's simply stopping wasting the only thing you really have. And let me ask you something before I finish. Are you really present in your life, or are you just going through it? Because if you've come this far, if you've listened to all this and felt something stir inside you, then there's a part of you that's still alive. It's still wanting to wake up. It's still willing to stop running and finally stay. If you've come this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You watch the videos, you reflect on each idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to go with this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the codes of the White Rabbit are ready for you. The link is in the video description. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.